Your DNA carries a secret that the maps never told you, a truth buried not in the soil of a divided land, but in the very cells you carry right now. Stop what you're doing and look at your hands, your reflection, your family photos, because if your roots trace back to Bengal, to the lush, sprawling deltas of the Ganges and Brahmaputra, everything you believe about who you are, about the line that separates India from Bangladesh, is about to be shattered in a way that might feel deeply personal. This is not a history lesson from a textbook. This is the story whispered in your blood, a story science finally dragged into the light. And when a team of geneticists decided to compare the DNA of Bengalis on both sides of that barbed wire border, the results didn't just surprise them. They sent shockwaves through everything we thought we knew about identity, ancestry, and the very concept of a people. It's a revelation so profound that it rewrites not just the past, but the intimate, biological truth of who you are. And by the end of this video, you'll never see your own family tree the same way again. For generations, the story we were told was one of clean breaks. We look at the map and we see two distinct sovereign nations, the Republic of India and the People's Republic of Bangladesh. We are told a narrative of partition, of a line drawn in 1947 that ostensibly divided a people by religion, creating a Muslim-majority East Pakistan which, after a bloody war of liberation in 1971, became the fiercely independent nation of Bangladesh. The story implies a fundamental sorting, a divergence so powerful that it cleaved a unified land into two separate worlds. We learned about the political upheaval, the tragic displacement, the forging of different national anthems and flags. The implicit message, the quiet story whispered for 75 years, is that this political boundary represents a profound and perhaps even ancient division between the people on either side. The assumption was that centuries of distinct histories, different ruling empires, and separate religious evolutions had crafted two populations that, while sharing a language, were fundamentally, even biologically, on different paths. You might even feel this story in your own family's memory, in the tales of a lost homeland or a new beginning. But what if that entire narrative, the one built on maps and political decrees, is a surface-level fiction? What if your DNA holds a completely different and infinitely more complex story? The discovery began not with a headline, but with a quiet, meticulous ambition to map the genetic architecture of South Asia. A consortium of scientists, led by giants like David Reich and drawing on the foundational work of Indian researchers, embarked on a massive genome-wide analysis. Their goal was to understand the deep population history of the region, and naturally, the dense, historically rich region of Bengal became a critical piece of the puzzle. What they found when they started comparing samples from West Bengal in India with samples from Bangladesh was not a clean genetic split. It was a mirror. The first shocking revelation was that the single largest ancestral component in both populations was identical, a deep, ancient mixture between two foundational groups. The ancestral North Indians, or ANI, related to populations from the Middle East, Central Asia, and Europe, and the ancestral South Indians, or ASI, the original inhabitants of the subcontinent. In West Bengal, this blend creates a genetic landscape where the ANI component can range from roughly 45 to 55%, while the ASI component sits at around 25 to 35%. When the geneticists turned their gaze eastward to Bangladesh, they braced for a radically different signature. Instead, they found the same bedrock. The Bengali genetic engine, this millennia-old fusion of North and South, was the undeniable, dominant truth for both populations. The Great Partition of 1947, for all its political and human tragedy, did not even leave a scratch on this deep, shared ancestry. You are, in the most fundamental sense, the same people. But it was the subtle discordances that began to reveal a hidden and far more shocking pattern. As the geneticists zoomed in, peeling back the layers of the genome, the story shifted from a unified portrait to a tale of distinct, gender-specific migrations. The first major plot twist came when they examined the Y chromosome, the piece of genetic code passed down exclusively from father to son, a silent, unbroken line stretching back through millennia. Here, the border began to manifest, not as a clean wall, but as a fading echo. In West Bengal, the Y chromosome tells a powerful story of a westward connection. Researchers found that a specific lineage, known as haplogroup R1A1, is staggeringly common. In upper caste populations in West Bengal, its frequency can reach a remarkable 40 to 50%. This is not a local lineage. It is a genetic bullet point in the story of massive Bronze Age migrations from the Pontic-Caspian steppe, the genetic signature of pastoralists who swept into Europe and South Asia, forever changing the linguistic and cultural landscape. This paternal line links a significant portion of West Bengal's male ancestors directly to the great migrations that defined the Indo-European world. Now, here is where the story makes your heart beat a little faster. When the same Y chromosome analysis was conducted on the general population of Bangladesh, the signal from the steppe began to fade dramatically. The frequency of that same R1A1 lineage drops to a range of approximately 20 to 30%. It's still present, a testament to shared roots, but it's no longer the dominant shout. It's a whisper in a chorus. And what was drowning it out? A completely different male lineage was surging. This other lineage is called haplogroup OM175. This is not a lineage from the steppe. This is a lineage whose story originates in East Asia. In West Bengal, it is a relatively minor note, found in about 5 to 10% of the population. But across the border in Bangladesh, it becomes a defining genetic force, present in roughly 15 to 25% of all men. This wasn't a subtle statistical wobble. This was a profound, sex-biased migration story, written directly into the male line. It revealed that the modern border, in a very real biological sense, marks the edge of a massive, more recent demographic expansion from the east. A wave of Tibeto-Burman and Austroasiatic-speaking peoples who moved into the lush, riverine landscape of what is now Bangladesh, leaving their genetic signature primarily through the male line. This single revelation flips the entire narrative. The political border isn't just a modern line, it's a genetic frontier where two great tides of human history, one from the Central Asian steppe, the other from Southeast Asia, met and mingled, creating a unique Y chromosome profile that makes a Bengali man in Dhaka, on average, genetically distinct from a Bengali man in Kolkata in this specific, patrilineal way. Your father's line might be telling you a different epic than you ever imagined. The implications of this discovery are staggering because they rewrite the intimate family story. If you are a man with paternal roots in Bangladesh, the biological memory of a Tibeto-Burman or Austroasiatic ancestor, a man who likely spoke a language from a family completely unrelated to Bengali, may be living on in your cells right now. This isn't a metaphor, it's a measurable, quantifiable chemical memory in your DNA. The scandal, if we can call it that, is that the history books and national narratives have been completely silent about this foundational male-mediated contribution to the very identity of what it means to be a Bangladeshi. It forces a dizzying question. What is a nation? Is it a political document, a shared language, or the sum of these ancient, often forgotten biological unions? And what of the women? This is where the evidence breakdown takes an even more intimate and sobering turn. While the Y chromosome told a story of difference, the mitochondrial DNA, the mtDNA, an entirely separate genetic code passed down only from a mother to her children, whispered a far more ancient and unified story of a land. Over 60% of individuals on both sides of the border carry variants of the mitochondrial macrohaplogroup M. This is the deep, foundational maternal lineage of South Asia, stretching back to the very first modern human migrations out of Africa along the southern coastal route, tens of thousands of years before the steppe existed, before the Indo-European languages were a flicker of a thought. This female line is the bedrock, the anchor of continuity. The mothers of Bengal, from the Hooghly to the Meghna, are profoundly, deeply, and anciently the same. But even here, a subtle, haunting distinction emerged, one that links back directly to the patriarchal migrations. Scientists found that a specific West Eurasian maternal lineage, known as U2I, is present at a frequency of about 10 to 15% in West Bengal. In Bangladesh, however, its frequency is halved, sitting at around 5 to 8%. This lineage is often correlated with the very same ANI-rich populations that brought the high frequencies of R1A1. So, while the maternal base is overwhelmingly South Asian, the ripples of those west to east migrations, which were so heavily driven by men, did bring some women with them, and their genetic shadow is slightly deeper on the Indian side of the border. The staggering conclusion is a story of intimate asymmetry, waves of men from the west mixing with local women, contributing their paternal lines and a sliver of maternal lineages, while men from the east also mixed with the same pool of local women, boosting their own East Asian paternal lines, but leaving a much fainter maternal trace. The fundamental, unbroken thread is the female line. The mothers belong to this soil in a way that the fathers' lines, with their grand transcontinental journeys, simply do not. The political border, therefore, is not just a line on a map. It is a ghostly genetic veil, separating two populations who share the same mothers but were shaped by different fathers. The evidence breakdown delves into even more intricate and more recent genetic patterns. By using a technique that detects identity by descent, or IBD segments, long, identical chunks of DNA shared between individuals who inherited them from a common ancestor, scientists could timestamp the history recorded in the Bengali genome. This technique confirmed a two-stage symphony of population making. The first, thunderous movement was the ANI-AC admixture, a massive, transformative event that occurred primarily between 3,000 and 2,000 years ago, in the late Bronze Age and early Iron Age. This is the great genetic fusion that created the very concept of the Indian genome, a gradient of ancestry that varies by geography and caste, but is a singular, monumental event for the entire subcontinent. The people of Bengal, on both sides of the future border, were formed in this crucible. Then, more recently, predominantly within the last 1,000 years, a second, smaller but locally powerful wave of East Asian gene flow began to wash over the eastern part of the region. This is what the Y chromosome data was screaming about. The IBD analysis in present-day Bangladesh shows an unmistakably stronger signal of recent shared ancestry with Tibeto-Burman and Austroasiatic tribal groups, a signal that is much weaker in West Bengal. This is not ancient, misty prehistory. This is a migration that was happening while the Sultanate of Bengal rose and fell, while the Mughals surveyed their domain, while European traders first navigated the delta. The genetic difference was being laid down right under the nose of recorded history, a secret biological revolution that no scribe documented but that your DNA archives in perfect detail. This second wave likely brought with it not just new genetic markers but a different social structure. The East Asian associated OM175 haplogroup found in Bangladesh is incredibly diverse, comprising many different sublineages. This suggests a continuous trickle of different groups from the East over centuries, rather than a single, dramatic invasion. These were people who adapted to the challenging, river-carved landscape of eastern Bengal, a terrain of dense forests and seasonal floods that likely acted as a filter, allowing them to establish strong founder effects. These founder effects, where a small initial population expands rapidly, can amplify a genetic signal like OM175 far beyond the actual proportion of initial migrants, making it a dominant feature on the male landscape. Consequently, the implication for you, the viewer, especially if your family comes from Bangladesh, is a profound realignment of self. The linguistic and cultural unity of the Bengali language, the thing that feels like the ultimate proof of a single people, is actually a brilliant, powerful layer that was adopted and spread over this deeply heterogeneous genetic foundation. Your ancestors may have spoken Santali, or Garo, or Bishnupriya Manipuri, before their descendants ever shaped the sweet, sophisticated cadences of Bangla. The map inside you is a palimpsest, a parchment written over many times, and the modern language and culture are simply the latest, most successful, and most beautiful inscription, masking the older, erased, but still faintly visible text beneath. The story we were told about caste also crumbles under this new genetic scrutiny. In West Bengal, the Y chromosome frequency of R1A1 is heavily stratified. It's in the Brahmins and other upper castes where you find that 40 to 50% frequency. The signal of the steppe pastoralists is a signal of status, a biological echo of a historical social hierarchy where certain male lineages became associated with priestly and ruling classes and maintained their identity through strict endogamy. The lower castes and tribal groups in West Bengal tell a very different Y chromosome story, one with more ASI-associated lineages and even some East Asian influx. Across the border in Bangladesh, where the population is overwhelmingly Muslim, this genetic stratification tied to caste is largely absent. The conversion to Islam, a faith that preaches social equality, acted as a massive genetic leveler. It broke down the rigid barriers of endogamy enforced by the Hindu caste system, creating a more genetically admixed population, where the steppe signal is not hoarded at the top of a social pyramid, but distributed more evenly, albeit at a lower overall frequency, due to the diluting effect of the East Asian paternal influx. Your DNA, therefore, does not just remember a migration. It remembers an oppressive social system and, on the other side of the border, a religious revolution that shattered it. The border is a line between a society where your genes were a passport to privilege and one where a new, egalitarian social contract rewrote the rules of biological mixing. Expert corroboration for this multi-layered revelation comes from the very architects of Indian population genetics, in their landmark 2006 paper in the American Journal of Human Genetics. Sangamitra Sengupta and her colleagues at the Central Forensic Science Laboratory in Kolkata methodically laid out the Y chromosome geography of the subcontinent. They were among the first to show the decline of R1A1, a high-frequency zone that stretches from the northwest down into the Ganges Plain, but begins to taper off sharply east of the Bhagirathi-Hooghly River system. They documented the reciprocal rise of the OM175 groups in the east, painting a picture of a genetic frontier. On the maternal side, the work of Gyaneshwar Chaubey and his team at the Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology, published in journals like Genome Biology and Evolution, has been revolutionary. Their deep dives into mitochondrial DNA have shown that while the macro haplogroup M is a unifying force, the subtle frequency changes of subclades like M5 and M30, along with clines in West Eurasian U2I, track the very same eastward movement. Crucially, they showed that this female line diversity predates the Great Steppe migrations, grounding the Bengali people in an autochthonous, indigenous reality that no amount of subsequent male-mediated migration could ever erase. Perhaps the most beautiful synthesis comes from the David Reich Lab's work on ancient DNA and population structure, notably in Nakatsuka et al.'s 2017 paper in Nature. On the promise of ancient DNA in South Asia, they didn't just look at modern populations. They reconstructed the ghosts of past populations. They confirmed that the modern Bengali individual can be modeled as a mixture of a deeply ancient indigenous South Asian group, a West Eurasian group that brought the steppe ancestry, and a significant additional pulse from East Asia. The model doesn't work without all three. They also provided the time frame, anchoring the ANI-ASI mixture to the Bronze Age decline of the Indus Valley civilization, a time of immense demographic chaos and reformation, and the East Asian pulse to the more recent historical period, likely associated with the expansion of wet rice agriculture, which the Austroasiatic and Tibeto-Burman groups may have specialized in within the challenging ecology of the Eastern Delta. This turns the narrative from a dry science report into a vivid, breathing human drama of technological innovation. The migration of East Asian males into what is now Bangladesh may not have been a conquest, but an agricultural collaboration, a transfer of knowledge about cultivating the super-productive landscape that ultimately made the region the densely populated heartland it is today. Your ancestors weren't just mixing, they were innovating, adapting, and creating a new society. The resolution, the final crystalline truth that cements this new narrative, is that the political border between West Bengal and Bangladesh is a crude, late-arriving line drawn over an ancient, complex, and breathtakingly human genetic landscape. It did not divide a people. It bisected a cline, a gradient of ancestry that had been forming naturally for thousands of years. The shared Bengali identity, with its one language and its profound, soulful culture, is not a sign of genetic purity, but a testament to the power of shared history and geography to forge unity from heterogeneity. A man in Kolkata with a high frequency of steppe R1A1 in his blood shares the same deep maternal ancestors, the same foundational Bronze Age heritage, and the same love for Rabindranath Tagore's poetry as a man in Sylhet whose Y chromosome traces back to a Tibeto-Burman hill tribe. The DNA results shocked everyone because they proved that nationalism is a story we choose to tell, while population genetics is the story our bodies refuse to forget. Your ancestry is not a single line on a map. It is a delta, a confluence of rivers flowing from the north, the west, and the east, all emptying into the one great, turbulent, and beautiful sea of the Bengali people. You are the living, breathing evidence of a truth far more profound and unifying than any political border could ever contain. The secret your DNA holds is that you were one people long before a line was drawn, and you remain one people in your very cells, carrying a history of migration, assimilation, and resilience that no partition can ever divide. So now, if this revelation rewired how you see your own identity, smash that like button and subscribe because we're unearthing more hidden truths that the textbooks buried. And if you don't want to miss the next one, Hit that bell and drop a comment right now with the one thing that shocked you the most about your own ancestry. Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Thanks for staying until the very end. Goodbye for now.